Hi, I'm Stu. Welcome back to another LumaFusion video tutorial. I currently haven't got my hands on the iPhone 13 Pro for various reasons. So I kindly asked mobile journalist, lecturer, surfer and all-round iPhone enthusiast Rob Layton if he could let me borrow some of his iPhone 13 Pro test footage shot in ProRes using Filmic Pro, and he sent me some. So I'm going to show you how I created the little sampler that you're looking at right now. Let's get started. Okay, so I've got the rough cut with the 4 clips that Rob has so kindly shot, and as you can see we've got a graphic element at the back end, blank clip, we've got a nice little transition light leak type thing that we'll talk about later on, we have seagulls squawking, and we've also got an audio track which I have got switched off at the moment, and then ProRes shot by Rob Layton is a graphic that I created in Adobe Spark. If you want to see how I go about creating my titles and why I don't tend to use the titling option in LumaFusion here so much, I do use it, but when it comes to titles like this, I prefer to create them and animate them purely using Adobe Spark. So we've got a subcut here on the first shot, which I'm calling Beach House, but I'm pretty sure it is a restaurant. And then we've got our 2 ladies sitting down on the park bench. We've got a guy warming up to go out paddleboarding, and we've got a guy assessing the waves before he goes in surfing. So just a quick sampler in effect. So what I've started to do is, rather than putting a blank clip at the beginning, going from black into the beach house shot, and you'll see I've used a blank clip at the end, what I've actually started to do is, if we tap on that, press 5 on the keyboard, go into original, is to make this black. So we lower the brightness, we lower the contrast. If you followed my previous video tutorial about doing a custom flash transition, you're basically doing the opposite of that, and we crank the gamma all the way to the right, and that gives us black. But what this allows me to do is keep the original clip and do an L cut with the audio so that the audio is leading into the next 1, 2 and possibly even 3 clips as the timeline shows. So to do that, I'm going to do Option D. I'm then going to stretch out the audio, and I'll just reduce the timeline a little bit, and we'll take it to here to start with. Now, because I'm doing that, if you wanted to double up on the audio, by all means keep the gain as normal on the audio above, and you'll get this sort of effect. It's not really that noticeable apart from on the cut. Or you can go into the audio and reduce the gain to -90, and then that way it's just the L cut from the black clip at the beginning working its way through. So it's doing this. That then blends into the watching the sunset clip, which if I go into the audio for that, you'll see I've already reduced that to -6 decibels. The other thing you could do if you wanted to is just add a video cut audio cross transition, and that will just help the smooth out, even though it's going from silence here to the actual audio here. It does give you effectively a cross dissolve at the front end of this clip here, and allowing the other audio underneath to roll through. I've got that set up as well. And it continues across, and then I can decide what I want to do with the paddleboarder shot. Again, going to check the audio, it's at 0 at the moment, so I could expand this even further, take it right to the very end of the clip. What I can do is add another audio cross at the end. What I'll do is I'll stretch it out to blend between the 2 clips so that we're then jumping from the audio from the beginning at the beach house restaurant right the way through to the paddleboarding. And it works through. Now I've got the audio switched off here. If I turn it back on, you'll hear it. There's a subtle transition with the audio. And we then go into the light leak, which we'll leave for now. Now, when it comes to the music side of things, if I switch that on now and switch off the lock, you can see I've timed it so that the first note is basically at the beginning of the first actual cut. It does this. It sounds pretty good, and we'll zoom back out. Okay, so we're actually on another day now, and whilst you've been away, I have literally just made a cut in the music, lined up the first note with the ProRes and the cut of the beach house, terrace house restaurant, let that drift in, and then lined up the next beat with the back end of the ProRes disappearing. I've then also on the next note made sure it kind of lines up with the cut between watching the sunset and the beach house, and then that's naturally just giving me the cut into here, so I made sure that watching the sunset was long enough just to get to that point. I'm not worrying too much about audio here, but we will need to sort out that transition in a sec or two, and that naturally leads to this. And that, my friends, is what you call a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. And all I did was lean into it and make sure the black blank clip just timed to the next note. And if you want to, we can just make sure that that basically drifts out on the end of that note, and then that way it does this. And then we can have it fade out. Let's deal with this light leak transition now. The first thing I'm going to do is highlight the clip, press 1 on my keyboard, and change the blending to screen. Screen tends to work well with this kind of transition, where you can see the effect coming across. And the other thing I'm going to do is just add a couple of transitions, basic cross dissolves. We don't want them too long, so we're going to bring them down to about 0.5, and the same at the back end, shrink it down, and then just reposition things so it's kind of balanced in the middle, and you get this. And that's you, that's the transition completed. I've now switched on my seagulls squawking audio layer, and the only thing that I've done to this, if we go into the actual audio settings, is that I've lowered the gain to -9, and also I've got set up a bit of a pan in the actual audio. And I call this audio depth, and it basically, rather than just having the seagulls squawking in the background, I've started the sound over on the left hand side of the ear, not fully, but enough that you notice it, especially if you're wearing headphones. And then I've dropped a keyframe here, that way it just goes all the way over to the right for the remainder of the audio clip. And if we play that through, and the only thing I need to do to finish that off is once again down to the transitions and an audio cross at the back end. We'll just expand it out a little bit, highlight the transition and just stretch it off. And that means that when the seagulls are squawking, they gradually just fade away. That's roughly lined up with the light leak transition as well. The last two things that I have done to the little sampler is I have detached the audio from the paddle boarding, same with the surfer and the rocks. I've actually moved the audio on the surfer and the rocks to overlap a bit the paddle boarding. I'm then just going to add some audio cross dissolves to these two clips, and then we will just adjust things through so that it kind of blend between the two. And I'll just reduce the one at the back end as well. There we go. That way when we play it through, you just get a nice blend of the audio. And there we go. In terms of working with ProRes, it's really easy. to be honest with you, if you get anything from an iPad Pro or even just an iPad from 2017, 2018 onwards, I think it'll cope with the footage absolutely fine. As long as you can install iOS 15 and the latest version of LumaFusion, you're kind of gold. You're good to go. Where it becomes a difficulty is storage. Now I'm lucky enough that in this iPad Pro, I've got a couple of terabytes of storage, so I'm not worrying too much about ProRes in terms of storage on the iPad. I've also got a SanDisk external drive, and on my iPhone I've got around about 500 gigabytes. So if I was shooting with the iPhone 13 Pro, I'd probably look at getting the terabyte phone if I was going to be shooting ProRes, because space is going to become an issue if you don't have enough of it. So that's kind of my thoughts on ProRes. It edits absolutely beautifully, it's fast, it's efficient, you get great grading options on it as well, and it's something that obviously you can have some fun with, but it does take up a huge amount of storage. Just be aware of that. Don't forget to like, subscribe and tick that bell to get notified of the next video tutorial, and I will catch you on the next one. See you later.